After a heart-wrenching text ruined her blind date, a CEO discovered her amazing hidden strength as she sat alone at a dimly lit table in a bustling Chicago restaurant. Claire Reynolds looked around, her sharp eyes catching glimpses of couples laughing, whispering secrets, sharing glances that spoke volumes. She should have been excited. After all, this was her sister's carefully curated chance for a personal breakthrough. But just as the waiter set down her glass of red wine, her phone buzzed, cutting through the hum of conversation like a guillotine. "Claire, I regret the years lost. I want to talk. Dad." The words felt like a punch to the gut. Claire fought back the swell of emotion that threatened to drown her, the excitement for this blind date warping into a dark confusion. How could he reach out now? After all the years of silence, the countless missed birthdays, holidays, milestones, she felt a rush of anger mixing with the ache of abandonment. Fury at him for assuming she would simply welcome him back into her life after all this time. The date, Evan, was charming enough, but as his voice droned on about marketing trends, Claire's mind spiraled through memories of her father's absence. Mutual respect in the boardroom meant nothing if she couldn't grant it at home. The unease clawed at her. The conversation around the table felt hollow. She smiled and nodded, but inside she was cracking, layers of ambition and rage peeling away, exposing her beneath. The text had pulled her back into a past she thought she'd moved on from, and as Evan tried to engage her in small talk, her heart sank deeper into a silence that felt all-consuming. Excitement faded. The hope that had sparked when she arrived was snuffed out, leaving only despair. Without knowing why, she flinched at Evan's tentative hand across the table, the warmth he offered suddenly irritating. "You okay?" he asked, concern knitting his brow. It was the tipping point. "Honestly, no," Claire blurted. She stood abruptly, grabbing her things, leaving Evan blinking in shock. Outside, the cool evening air hit her face, a jagged gasp escaping her lips as her heart raced. Claire's world felt like a runaway train, and she had lost control. She fled to her high-rise office, the empty walls echoing her loneliness and doubt. Burying herself in work felt like the only escape. Days turned into late nights, yet even her discipline became a double-edged sword. Trust, once her lifeblood in the cutthroat marketing world, had become a vulnerability. Gossip spread like wildfire when a trusted colleague launched a silent coup, chipping away at the authority she'd fought to build. The betrayal stung, twisting the knife of her earlier pain, igniting a firestorm of inadequacy. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. But amidst the chaos, a chance meeting with Frank, a seasoned, retired creative director, pulled her gaze. He was sharp-witted, completely unpretentious, and he challenged her. "Vulnerability isn't a weakness unless you hide from it," he said, eyeing her as if she were a puzzle he wanted to solve. Somehow, she felt like he saw beyond the corporate veneer, into the very heart of her struggle. As Claire poured her resilience into a new campaign that centered on embracing human flaws, her self-worth wavered. Would the industry truly respect a woman willing to confront her vulnerabilities? And the text from her father still lingered, hanging over her like a storm cloud, weighing her down with unresolved questions. Just when a flicker of confidence began to light her path, whispers of buried family secrets echoed in her mind. What would she uncover, and would it heal her or further entrap her in turmoil? As she faced the unshakable dread of what lay ahead, Claire realized this was just the beginning, an inflection point in both her professional ambition and personal legacy. The fragile thread of her family's history intertwined with her aspirations, leaving Claire at a perilous cliff. Could confronting the truth set her free, or would it anchor her in the shadow of the past? Claire stared at the glowing screen of her phone, the name Dad flickering like a faulty neon light. Each time she thought of responding, a wave of frustration and confusion crashed over her. Thoughts swirled. Could she trust him again? Did she even want to? She pushed herself into the rhythms of the office, adopting an even sharper voice during meetings. It was easy to mask her inner turmoil behind corporate decision-making and marketing strategies, and the adrenaline fed her resolve. The idea of her campaign, flaws as assets, took root, transforming into a mantra she began to preach to her team. Embrace failure, learn and grow, she'd echo, yet internally she was struggling to reconcile this philosophy with her own fears. Frank's words echoed in her mind like a metronome. Vulnerability isn't a weakness unless you hide from it. He had perched himself on the edge of her professional existence, pushing her to question her long-held beliefs. Claire began to reflect on how much she had invested in maintaining a fortress, one crafted from ambition, success, and the fear of being discovered as inadequate. But that fortress was cracking. Each day, she felt more like an imposter, wrestling with the nagging suspicion that the very traits that propelled her career, intensity, control, and unrelenting drive, were isolating her, driving her deeper into an existential crisis. A challenging pitch for a high-stakes project presented an opportunity for both her professional redemption and personal growth. With her mind racing, Claire had sessions with her marketing team that felt like therapy. She gathered them in the room and said, "Let's not just plug our product, let's tell our story. Stories that resonate are stories of vulnerability." As her team brainstormed, their ideas flourished around themes of honesty and empathy, the atmosphere buzzing with newfound energy. Yet, as excitement built, she couldn't help but feel a tightening in her chest. Was she merely using this campaign as a distraction from her unresolved issues? The more she threw herself into the work, the more she felt she was avoiding a crucial confrontation, not with her colleagues or clients, but with herself and her family ancestry. Claire recalled the moments from her childhood, the brief visits from her father, followed by unspoken drinking excuses, and soon after, the deep absence that followed him out the door. She had tried to bury that. Instead, she locked it in a vault of her mind, only to have it sprung back into her consciousness when she least expected it. One evening, as she worked late under the cool glow of artificial lights, Claire's colleagues drifted out one by one, filling the sanctuary of silence with echoes of future obligations and family dinners. With each departing figure, her isolation morphed into realization. She needed to contact her father, not to absolve him, but to reclaim her narrative. If she was to embrace her past, she had to risk the uncertainty of confronting it. As the quiet lingered, she picked up her phone. Perhaps reaching out would not lead her to forgiveness, but to freeing herself from chains that kept her tied to a version of herself she no longer wanted to be, a version shaped by anger and doubt. But moments before her finger pressed the call button, her heart raced. What if she uncovered something more painful? What if his answers only deepened the wounds? Claire hesitated, feeling the precipice beneath her feet. The office door creaked, interrupting her spiraling thoughts. It was Frank again, with a knowing look, as if he sensed the emotional tempest within. "Are you ready to confront the truth, Claire?" he prompted. Her throat tightened, just as the enormity of her decision crashed over her. Claire took a deep breath, prepared to leap into uncertain territory, her path ahead both murky and liberating. The storm in her heart raged louder, urging her towards a conversation that could change everything. The moment of truth had arrived. Would she take the plunge into her past, or would her hesitation keep her anchored? Claire felt the weighted silence in the room as Frank's gaze bore into her, nudging her toward a precipice she had avoided for far too long. The flickering light of her phone felt almost like a warning siren. It reminded her of everything she had chosen to bury. She could choose deniability or open that door. "Are you really asking?" she retorted, finding her voice more clipped than intended. The edge in her tone belied the uncertainty churning within. It was a protective mechanism, a response from the fortress she had spent years building. Yet in that moment, it felt hollow. "Understanding isn't easy, but it's necessary," Frank said, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with Claire's chaotic thoughts. "You know that." She ran her fingers through her hair, letting out a breath she didn't know she was holding. The air felt thick with anticipation. What if the truth is worse than I imagine? Frank took a step forward, transforming from a mere observer into an ally. What if it's better? What if it's nothing like what you fear? You won't know until you ask. The simplicity of his statement resonated within her. It was a challenge by invitation, one that forced her to confront the shadow of her fear. How had she allowed herself to revolve around what could happen, what might hurt, rather than focusing on what could truly liberate her? As she stood there, the tough exterior she had perfected seemed to crack under the weight of emotional gravity. Flaws as assets, she had crafted that mantra for her team, yet here she was, unwilling to apply it to her own reality. "Okay," she said after what felt like an eternity, "I'll do it." The clarity of her decision surprised her, but the sour tang of anxiety lingered at the edges. Her fingers danced over the phone as she opened the messaging app. Each key felt heavy, each letter a slight tremor in her resolve. What should she say? It seemed impossible to articulate the swirling chaos within her. Instead, she typed a simple message: "Dad, can we talk?" After all her hesitation, there it was, the line thrown. Released into the ether, her heart raced as if anticipating a reply that could alter the trajectory of her life. As the minutes crawled by with torturous slowness, Claire turned her focus back to work. She approached the campaign content again. A newfound clarity sparked within her as she delved deeper into the storytelling aspects. Her team's ideas glimmered with potential, and this time she could feel genuine enthusiasm coursing through the discussions. Each contribution seemed more vibrant than the last, their stories laced with raw humanity. The pursuit of authenticity resonated deeper than any glossy marketing ploy. They weren't just pitching a product, they were sharing experiences, mining the vulnerable truths that connected them all. But despite the invigorating progress, Claire's heart remained ensnared in an ambivalent state. When her phone buzzed an hour later, she nearly knocked over her coffee in a frenzy to check it. It was a reply, simple yet weighty. "Sure, what time?" The sudden reality of her father's willingness to confront the past smashed into her consciousness. It was deceptively straightforward yet profound. What had she just opened? What new risk lay ahead in her search for emotional closure? Claire stared at the screen, masses of conflicting emotions swirling within her. Would this conversation lead to necessity or regret? There it was again, the choice between fear and the potential for understanding. "Frank," she called, her voice steady as she tried to keep her nerves at bay. "Get ready. We're going to make this campaign something bigger, more impactful." As Frank nodded, she realized she had taken the first step toward rewriting her own narrative. A collision of past and present awaited, and while she stood on the edge of unknown territory, the prospect of merging her personal evolution with her professional success was both terrifying and exhilarating. Little did she know, the conversation to come wouldn't just shake the foundations of her relationship with her father, it could redefine who she was at her core. What awaited on the other end of that line was yet to be explored, and Claire felt a newfound determination surge through her. The time had come to face the past. Claire sat in her office, the glow from her computer screen illuminating the frenzied thoughts swirling in her mind. She had crafted her career with meticulous precision, avoiding emotional entanglements and shunning vulnerability like a plague. Yet now, as she anticipated an imminent conversation with her father, the veneer of professionalism felt thin and flimsy. Ideas for the campaign flickered around her, but they seemed muted, dulled by the gravity of the upcoming discussion. Despite the buzzing atmosphere of her team's brainstorming session, Claire could only focus on her impending confrontation with her past. Would this be a moment of reckoning or a continuation of the silence that had persisted for too long? After sending the message to her father, Claire felt something shift inside her. The walls of her fortress began to erode, revealing cracks laden with years of buried resentment, fear, and unspoken pain. Watching her team collaborate animatedly, she couldn't shake the dissonance between their enthusiasm and her internal chaos. "Claire," Frank's voice cut through her reverie. "You okay?" The concern etched on his face was genuine, but she had grown so adept at hiding her emotions that she wondered whether he could detect her tumult. "Yeah, just thinking about," she hesitated, struggling to articulate the depths of her turmoil. "The talk with my dad." "Are you ready for it?" His words were simple yet powerful. They echoed the very questions she had been asking herself. Was she truly prepared to peel back the layers of her past? What if confronting him only deepened the chasms between them, or worse, reopened old wounds? "I have to be," Claire replied, the conviction in her voice surprising even herself. "If I'm going to lead my team effectively, I can't let my past hold me back." This wasn't just about one conversation. It was about changing the narrative of her entire life. For years, she had been the CEO who drove results but kept her personal struggles hidden, an enigma to her colleagues and peers. As the weight of this realization settled within her, determination swelled. "You know, it's not just about the conversation," Frank continued, his tone shifting slightly, as if he were probing deeper into her psyche. "It's about what happens after. Once you engage with that truth, there's no going back to the way things were." His words resonated with Claire, igniting a spark of urgency. She had weathered countless professional storms, leading her team through the chaos of campaigns, deadlines, and client demands. Each success had sharpened her instincts, but this was different. This was deeply personal territory. "I need to honor those hidden stories, Frank," she said, her voice steadier now. "Not just for me, but for my team. They need to see that vulnerability can be a strength, not a weakness." The juxtaposition of her professional powerhouse identity against her personal turmoil became clearer. Claire realized that the richness of authentic experiences was the cornerstone of meaningful stories. They were the very connections that could transform her work and her life. As the afternoon wore on, she gradually shifted her focus back to the campaign, emboldened by the newfound clarity. Conversations flowed easily among her team, the atmosphere brimming with synergy. They began weaving their narratives into something resonant, a tapestry of human experiences that reflected shared struggles and triumphs. However, the ticking clock loomed large in the back of her mind. Each passing minute counted down to the moment when she would confront her father. Would she be able to share her truth? Would she emerge from that conversation with the answers she sought? The stakes felt impossibly high as she glanced at the clock. Just half an hour remained before she would engage with the very roots of her distress. The tension coiled tightly in her chest, propelling her thoughts like a taut rubber band. The final brainstorming session culminated, and as her team celebrated their efforts, Claire felt the urge to embrace every ounce of encouragement she could muster. Let's set the bar even higher for ourselves, she suggested, infusing her voice with a sudden surge of charisma. We're not just creating campaigns, we're crafting stories that matter for all the right reasons. As her words resounded through the room, Claire felt a fresh wave of possibility wash over her. But despite this moment of triumph, a shadow loomed ahead. The conversation with her father still awaited, like an unseen storm on the horizon. Could she not only confront him, but redefine their relationship in the process? In that fleeting moment, Claire resolved that she would emerge from this experience transformed. Each decision she made from that point forward would carry the weight of her past and influence her future. As she stood at the precipice of a conversation that would change everything, she felt uncharacteristically alive. The fears that had once paralyzed her were now stirring into something fierce and liberating. Would facing the past yield the closure she desperately sought, or unearth deeper horrors? The moment approached, and Claire could only brace herself for the upheaval of emotions that awaited her. What would she discover about herself, her father, and the legacy of silence that hung between them? Claire stood in front of the mirror in the bathroom, her reflection unmoving yet deceptive, a veneer of confidence barely masking a swirling tempest of uncertainty. In 5 minutes, she would connect via video call with her father. What began as a simple act, sending a text, had evolved into an impending confrontation, the stakes of which loomed large in the emotional landscape of her life. As she adjusted a stray strand of hair, she couldn't help but replay her father's face in her mind. Each memory was tinged with a mix of nostalgia and bitterness, the moments of abandonment, the scarce affections, and the lingering silence that stretched across years. Would he even recognize the woman she had become? She breathed in deeply before her eyes landed on the clock, its persistent ticking a reminder that time was slipping away. Counting down to the moment when she would face the very core of her discontent, the shadow of vulnerability looming larger than ever. "Hello?" Her father's voice crackled through the device, an unexpected ache unfurling in her chest. His presence, though digital, cracked the crisp professionalism she'd cultivated over the years. "Hi, Dad." The simplicity of her response felt inadequate, yet it was all she could muster. Claire watched him as he settled into his chair, the familiar lines of his face betraying a lifetime of perceived detachment. His eyes, however, held something she hadn't anticipated, a flicker of uncertainty. "I received your message. This isn't usual for us, is it?" The reality of their distance settled like a stone in her stomach. "No, it's not." Her voice trembled slightly, but she shook her head as if to dislodge the fear that threatened to choke her commitment to this conversation. His brow furrowed, and he leaned forward. The faint sight of concern flickered momentarily on his face. "I suppose that's true, but I never imagined you'd want to discuss everything." There it was, the crack in the wall. Claire gripped the table in front of her, gathering her courage. "Everything is what's holding me back, Dad. I need to understand. It's not just about you anymore. It's about me, about my life." "Your life?" The incredulity in his tone stung. "I didn't know my absence weighed so heavily on you." "And I've never known how to express that," she admitted, guilt washing over her at the accusation hid in his words. "It's easier to keep it suppressed, isn't it? To become the CEO and wear that mask?" For the first time in their conversation, silence filled the space. Claire's heart raced as she experienced a cascade of emotions: anger at years wasted in silence, the sadness of desired connection, and an unexpected clarity. She was not just defining their relationship, she was asserting her own identity. "Claire, do you know how many times I've succeeded professionally, but still felt like a child looking for validation?" The words spilled from her, unguarded and raw. "You might not have seen it, but I always needed you to see me." The electricity in her voice shocked her, resonating like a chord struck in the deepest recesses of her being. Claire could feel the ping of realization, not just in her father's eyes, but in her own heart, a surge of strength unveiling itself. "Can we move forward from here?" she asked, her voice softer yet unyielding. "Can we try to communicate for once?" After what felt like an eternity, her father gave a subtle nod. The hollowness of their past was suddenly filled with a potential for change. Claire could see the faint glimmer of hope reflected in his weary gaze. What began as a simple conversation had morphed into the genesis of a new narrative, not just for them, but for herself, a reclaiming of identity forged through vulnerability. As their discussion expanded into exploring feelings, regrets, and aspirations, Claire was met with moments of sincerity that both exhilarated and terrified her. It was a reminder that she could craft the story of her past, no longer shackled to silence. As the conversation wound down, Claire felt a transformation burrowing itself into her. A confidence bloomed. This was not just about mending fences with her father. She was rediscovering her voice in every facet of life. But as this new sense of empowerment washed over her, the shadow of the unknown loomed larger, pressing her to confront another urgency. Decisions loomed ahead that would redefine not only her relationship with her father, but also her very approach to leadership and connection in her professional life. What truths would emerge from confronting her past, and how would they redefine her future? Even as the call ended, Claire stood poised at the brink of self-discovery, ready to dismantle the barriers that had kept her from truly leading. In doing so, would she discover even more profound aspects of herself, talents and strengths she had unknowingly suppressed? Claire sat at her desk, the remnants of the video call lingering in her mind. The echoes of her father's uncertainties rippled through her thoughts, both haunting and invigorating. With the sunrise spilling its light across her office, she felt an awakening, an insistence that she no longer wished to live in the shadow of her past. The realization of how profoundly her father's absence had impacted her identity weighed heavy, yet understanding that she had the power to change the narrative offered exhilarating freedom. Determined to implement this burgeoning confidence into her professional life, Claire opened her laptop. Task after task flashed across the screen, each one a critical component in ensuring her company's financial year ran smoothly. But today, the numbers felt cold against the warmth of her epiphany. This data was significant, yes, but what if she layered in her newfound voice? What if she dared to lead with authenticity rather than the rigid, polished veneer she had honed over the years? She recalled the moments of connection from her conversation with her father, how vulnerability had started to mitigate their sacred silence. Perhaps, she mused, this openness could translate into her leadership style. She began to process an idea that had long simmered beneath her meticulously orchestrated facade. After a few minutes, she began drafting an email to her upper management team. It was risky. She intended to convene a meeting not solely focused on performance metrics, but on collective aspirations for the company and the voids each team member might feel. Would they welcome this shift, or would they recoil in disbelief? The tension tightened in her chest, but she pressed on, relishing the butterflies in her stomach as her fingers flew across the keyboard, drafting a message that expressed her intent to create a culture where everyone felt valued, seen, and heard. Once the email was dispatched, Claire allowed herself a few deep breaths. Yet a familiar doubt crept up, whispering the old refrain, "Who were you to dictate how others should feel?" Hadn't she often been the most guarded of all? It was unsettling to confront her history while challenging her authority, but perhaps that was the very crux of her transformation, a willingness to embrace her imperfections and acknowledge that she was still learning how to lead. As the day moved forward and the meeting approached, Claire prepared by revisiting her notes, but they felt inadequate. She would present numbers and forecasts, but with a vulnerability that would expose the core of her ambitions and fears. The specter of her father's absence haunted her with every word she rehearsed. Yet she chose to keep pushing forward. Her achievements mattered, but they meant little without the stories behind them. When the moment arrived, Claire walked into the conference room, her heart thundering against her ribcage, barely maintaining composure. Eager faces turned toward her, but instead of reciting the standard protocol, she began with her truth. She spoke openly about her journey, the struggle for self-acceptance, and how leading from that space felt fundamentally important. Her colleagues listened with rapt attention, and Claire found herself emboldened, each word anchoring her deeper into an authenticity she had resisted for far too long. As she shared the weight of expectation, a collective empathy unfolded across the room. What had started as a conversation about performance metrics morphed into sharing dreams, fears, and the bold desire to redefine what collaborative leadership could look like. In the end, Claire observed nods of understanding and warmth enveloping the atmosphere. Something palpable shifted, an assurance that vulnerability was a strength rewoven through the fabric of professionalism. As the initial shock of her bold move began to settle, the group started sharing their stories, one after another giving voice to their struggles and aspirations. Outcomes were bred from this willingness to connect. A proposal formed for community support in their projects, aimed at creating deeper connections both within the office and beyond. But just as Bella, one of her team members, suggested forging a community project to extend their values to the public, Claire's phone buzzed on the table, interrupting the moment. The incoming message glinted ominously on the screen, a notification from her father seeking another conversation. The freeing thrill of her newly embraced leadership sparked a fresh wave of dread. Claire inhaled sharply, recognizing that further exploration of her relationship with her father now felt even more relevant. Would facing more truths about her past fortify her newfound connections, or would it unravel everything she had just built? Determined, she resolved to answer, to confront this next chapter and embrace the challenge that awaited her. What could a deeper understanding of her personal world yield in the grand tapestry of her life? The meeting closed, but her journey toward full integration of the vulnerable and the capable was just beginning. Claire's heart raced as she stared at the flashing screen. A familiar twist of anxiety coiled in her stomach, not from the meeting now concluded, but from the prospect of reopening a dialogue with her father. Every part of her yearned to push the fear aside, to focus on the breakthrough in the conference room. Yet, the thought of rekindling a relationship so fragile and fraught created a weight she couldn't shake. Taking a deep breath, Claire navigated to the messaging app and opened her father's text. The words were brief yet laced with the complex emotions she had come to associate with him. "Can we talk? I miss you." Simple, but it felt heavy, laden with years of regret and longing. She hesitated, pondering the risks of engaging deeply when her professional life had just begun to flourish. Instead of replying immediately, she decided to channel her uncertainty into action. The exhilaration of authenticity pulsed through her veins, urging her to transform this emotional chaos into strength. Inspired by the outpouring of vulnerability at the meeting, she imagined an approach that merged her personal struggles with her professional growth. Making her way to the building's common area, a vibrant space filled with natural light and eclectic art pieces, she settled into a corner sofa. She took her journal from her bag, flipping through pages filled with disconnected thoughts, unresolved conflicts, and, increasingly, new ideas for her leadership journey. She began to write, capturing the essence of her discussions and doodling abstractions of what genuine leadership looked like, bridging emotions and metrics into a coherent vision. As the words flowed from her pen, patterns emerged. She noticed that each of her entries reflected not just her aspirations, but also her sources of apprehension. Clarity began to unfurl, a project concept that combined her task-oriented mindset with her burgeoning emotional intelligence. She titled it the Authentic Leader Project. As she sketched out key components, workshops where employees could safely share personal narratives, professional development aligned with emotional growth, it all felt right. The excitement of the potential to initiate change coursed through her, feeding her resolve. However, as she closed her journal, the phone buzzed again, her father. Taking a moment, she contemplated if this conversation could further entrench her in a battle for self-definition. "Can we meet?" It was a simple enough request that drummed up the complexity of their relationship. She was torn. Bridging these two worlds, her personal life with her professional aspirations, could either empower her or shatter the fragile sense of control she was beginning to build. Before responding, Claire vied for calm clarity. She reminded herself of the transformation sparked in her meeting. Perhaps this was the next step in her evolution. Resolute, she sent a message, agreeing to meet, setting a time that felt adequate for both reflection and preparation. As the hours passed, anticipation twisted into a knot of varying emotions, each laden with potential for both confrontation and connection. The stakes loomed high. She knew that embracing this challenge could ultimately fortify her leadership journey, intertwining her personal gains with her professional development, weaving a more complete narrative. When the meeting time approached, she felt vulnerable yet exhilarated. She had the tools now, her newly found confidence, the language of connection. But would it be enough? The uncertainty was palpable, but Claire recognized it for what it was, a testament to her growth. Stepping out of the office, she felt the heaviness lifting, replaced by a sense of agency. This meeting could redefine old perceptions, details of a childhood left in the shadows. She had the clarity to engage meaningfully, to embody both her past and her aspirations. As she approached the cafe they agreed on, the pulse of the city around her seemed to mirror her internal conflict, alive yet chaotic. Just as she reached the door, a text notification buzzed, an unexpected message from Bella about the community project proposal, hinting at potential support for mental health awareness initiatives sparked by Claire's leadership meeting. Pondering the intricate web of empathy her journey had revealed, Claire wondered if she could integrate the voices around her into the dialogue with her father. Could these initiatives serve as both a backdrop for her father's story and a platform for her own voice? This evolving interplay drew her onward. Would the endeavor to forge these connections prove synergistic or spiral into deeper revelations that threatened her newfound resolve? The end of one path loomed while the beginning of another awaited. There was something intoxicating about the aroma of coffee wafting through the cafe as Claire stepped inside. It enveloped her like a warm embrace, a fleeting moment of comfort amidst the storm brewing within her. She mentally adjusted her expectations, preparing to confront not just her father, but the shadows of uncertainty lingering from her past. As she found a table near the window, she replayed the conversation in her mind. Would they discuss their years apart? Would her father even understand the woman she had become? The prospect of wanting to be seen by him pulled at her, creating a buoyant hope, yet grounded by a fear of rejection. Moments later, her father entered, his presence both familiar and foreign. The lines etched into his face bore witness to his own struggles, yet remained layered with the gravity of their history. He looked different, noticeably older. Did regret make him appear this way, or had time unearthed vulnerabilities he once hid? "Claire," he said softly as he approached the table, his stride tentative, almost as if testing the ground beneath him. The name felt foreign, yet at the same time intimate. "Hi, Dad," she replied, motioning for him to sit. Her heart raced as they exchanged a glance, each carrying a script filled with years of silence and missed connections. Their dialogue began as a cautious dance, filled with repetitive questions. How had her job been? Was he proud of her success? Each echoing a search for mutual validation. Yet beneath the surface lurked deeper themes, the unhealed wounds of a fractured relationship. Claire, he broke the pattern, his voice imbued with a sincerity that nudged the walls surrounding her heart. I know I haven't been a good father. I wish I had done better. For you. The admission hung in the air, thick with both vulnerability and resolve. It stirred within her, rattling her thoughts. How could she carve space for his apology while still demanding acknowledgement of her pain? The ground she stood on had been shaped by years of disappointment, yet she sensed an opportunity to redefine their narrative. I've been hurt by your absence. The words spilled out before she could restrain them, fueled by the building fire of her emotions, decades of feelings converging in that one moment. But I'm also discovering who I am outside of that hurt. My work, my ideas, they're all tied to my past. His gaze softened, revealing a flicker of understanding, a connection she had been longing for amidst the tumult. That's what I wanted to talk about, he said, leaning in. The legacy we leave, how we impact those around us. I've wasted so much time. Legacies had always intrigued Claire, particularly as she envisioned her own amid the projects she felt passionate about. The prospect of building the Authentic Leader Project now intertwined with this very moment, her father's search for redemption and her own path towards genuine leadership. As the conversation unfolded, she began to grasp their shared struggle, each minimization of feelings, each avoidance of difficult discussions serving as a barrier. It was a vital realization that urged her to shift her focus from blame to mutual growth. I believe in the importance of sharing our stories, Claire claimed, emboldened by her commitment to foster connection within her own work echoes. The more we share, the more we heal. She could sense a ripple of hope merging with unspoken fears that both she and her father had carried for far too long. Yet, as they navigated through emotional terrain, Claire couldn't shake the anticipation of truth. Confronting him about their history loomed like a heavy fog. Would he take the plunge or remain mired in defensiveness? The pang of uncertainty coursed through her. It was evident that their conversation was both a reckoning and a beginning. Claire understood now that confronting her fears about her father may act as an accelerant for her professional aspirations and personal healing. As they reached a pivotal moment in their dialogue, her father paused, collecting his thoughts, a palpable tension palpable around the table. Would he take the leap towards genuine accountability or slip back into patterns of old that had kept both of them estranged? The desire for clarity crackled in the air, initiating a reckoning that could redefine both their legacies. Claire felt the weight of the moment rest squarely on her shoulders, the question hovering as she awaited his response. Would this be the answer she sought, or merely another cycle of disappointment? The moment of truth was approaching. As her father finally broke the silence, Claire leaned forward, hunger for a response woven deep into her expression. You have to understand, Dad. I can't just brush aside the pain of your absence. He looked away, and for a moment she feared he would retreat to familiar defenses. Yet instead, he took a shaky breath. I know I owe you more than just words. I've spent years trying to justify my choices, to paint them as necessary for my career, but now I see my priorities were all wrong. Claire absorbed his confession, the discord within her oscillating between skepticism and a budding sense of hope. Did he genuinely understand the depth of his absence? Was this moment constitutive or merely transitory? The cafe suddenly seemed smaller, as if their conversation had drawn in the very air around them, suffocating yet exhilarating. We can't rewrite the past, she said cautiously, but we can work towards something different. That's what I want for myself, transparency in my work and my relationships. So, tell me about the Authentic Leader Project, he urged, keen curiosity replacing the lingering guilt on his face. Invigorated by the sudden shift in weight from her shoulders, Claire felt her passion surface as she described her vision, a platform that would empower individuals to share their narratives, to lead from places of authenticity rather than persona. Every word she spoke unraveled threads of her fears and dreams, weaving them into a tapestry that felt not just aspirational, but necessary. "It's about vulnerability," she said, leaning closer. "People don't need another successful facade. They need to see experiences that resonate, that heal. I want to create spaces where leaders can be real with their followers." Her father nodded slowly, as if trying to grasp this new aspect of her life. "And you believe I can support you in this?" "Understanding my struggles and working through them together, yes. Perhaps we can even develop something together, mending our own legacy." The weight of her suggestion rested heavily on both. As she watched her father process her invitation, Claire's heart raced, not just with hope, but with an urge to confront deeper questions that had been simmering at the core of her aspirations. Could she truly depend on him, given their tumultuous past? Not without risk, but perhaps therein lay an opportunity for growth. "This scare," he began, shifting uncomfortably, "isn't something easily overcome. Transformation requires commitment, time, and honesty, not just with you, but with myself. Are you willing to face that?" Claire's voice bore determination, tinged with uncertainty. This revelation felt like a symbolic crossroads, echoing back to her professional life, where commitment derived directly from willingness to embrace challenges. "Yes," he answered, his voice quieter yet steady. "I'll try." But beneath the inspiring exchange, Claire wrestled with her subconscious. Did she truly believe his promise, or was she merely accommodating the crumbs of accountability? The mathematical tension between possibility and her instinct for self-preservation gnawed at her. Claire felt her heart race. His acknowledgement was a pivotal moment, but her skepticism nagged at the edges. Had he truly learned from the years of absence, or was this just the surface of an old pattern? "What have you learned, Dad? Can you really change?" she asked, her tone firm yet searching. He inhaled deeply, meeting her gaze with newfound intensity. "I keep returning to this idea of missed opportunity. I want to know you, Claire, not just the successful CEO, but the woman whose childhood I forsook." The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard, yet she clung to her resolve. "It's not just about you anymore, Dad," she asserted. "I need to reclaim my narrative. I'm determined to redefine my legacy through transparency, both professionally and personally." The words seemed to resonate with him. He leaned closer, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. "I want to support that journey." As the conversation unfolded, Claire shared her vision for the Authentic Leader Project, illuminating her philosophy of embracing vulnerability as a strength. She described how this project could serve as a beacon for others, empowering them to share their stories. He listened intently, nodding, as if he were absorbing every word. And Claire felt a flicker of connection, a rare moment of alignment with the man she had once resented. "I see your passion," he said, his voice earnest, "and I want to be part of it." The prospect of her father entering this new chapter felt both invigorating and unnerving. Could this collaboration genuinely alter the course of their relationship, or would it ultimately reveal the depth of their disconnect? Claire's thoughts raced, balancing the thrilling vision of success against the anxiety of past failures. "So, how do we make this happen?" Her voice quivered slightly, each word steeped in cautious optimism. "Let's start small," he suggested thoughtfully. "We can co-host workshops where we tackle personal stories of ambition and vulnerability. If we share our experiences, it may foster connection not just between us, but outwards into the community." The idea ignited a fire in Claire. This wasn't just a project, it could catalyze their relationship, transforming shared history into a pathway for healing. "That's brilliant," she exclaimed. "We can develop a series of workshops, perhaps even tie in community service initiatives that highlight mental health and awareness, helping others navigate their journeys." His expression brightened, a spark of enthusiasm cloaked in hesitant acknowledgement. "You're right. We can utilize our stories to uplift others. It's time for us to embrace our past so we can guide others." The depth of their shared commitment rippled through Claire. This wasn't just about healing her past, it was about creating a legacy rooted in compassion and connection. But as the meeting progressed, Claire was keenly aware of the emotional balancing act this relationship still required. The specter of disappointment still loomed, urging her to tread cautiously. Would her father remain committed during the inevitable challenges that lay ahead? "Can we promise to face hard conversations together?" Claire voiced her thought, vulnerability threading through her words. "Yes," he affirmed, sincerity resonating from his core. "Navigating this won't be easy, but I'm committed to it, not just for you, but for both of us." In that moment, a flood of recognition swept over Claire. This was an inflection point, not just in her relationship with her father, but in her leadership journey as a whole. A realization blossomed that embracing this partnership could breed authenticity and connection, not only in her professional life, but also in her personal growth. As they mapped out the project's beginnings, Claire felt a tangible shift within her. She was plunging headfirst into her future, propelled by the lessons of her past. There was power in vulnerability, reclamation, and the courage to resurrect lost connections. Their discussions began to create a blueprint not solely for an initiative, but for a collaborative movement built on shared experiences that could resonate beyond their small circle. As the hours slipped by, they laid more groundwork, and Claire felt the heaviness of years lift just a little. Together, they could redefine their history, crafting an authentic narrative that combined risk with healing, a legacy reflecting a newfound commitment. "The project will aim to cultivate a culture of empathy," she emphasized, warmth expanding within her chest. "We can create workshops, mentor programs, support systems for those who've also had struggles." "I agree," he said, beaming with a mixture of hope and nervousness. With each word exchanged, the solidifying bond between them created a pathway on which they could tread together, fraught with potential, yet anchored in the determination to create something meaningful. Just as their hopes began to merge, Claire's phone vibrated, diverting her a moment. It was Bella again, yet another message prompting thoughts of expanding outreach for the project. The realization hit her. The ripples of their shared endeavor could extend even further. The impending momentum felt promising, igniting within her a desire to nurture connections throughout their community. As they concluded the meeting, Claire made an internal vow, not only to reclaim her narrative, but to craft a legacy intertwined with belonging, hope, and connection. In her father's willingness to journey beside her, she found the strength to face her turbulent past head-on and emerge triumphantly as both a daughter and an authentic leader. The complexities ahead invigorated her. Together, they could not only chart new territory, but redefined what it meant to lead with resilience and vulnerability, each step furthering the legacy they would co-create. As they rose from their seats, Claire felt an exhilaration that pulsed through her. This wasn't just a conversation, but the beginning of profound transformation, the climax of a story that held the promise of catharsis. Claire smiled at her father, a shared confidence blooming between them. They were embarking on this journey together, their lives intertwined in ways they had yet to fully understand. The past, once a source of separation, now served as the foundation from which they could rebuild, shaping a narrative that would honor their individual struggles while forging a collaborative legacy that radiated authenticity and hope to others. No longer trapped by silence or regret, the future loomed bright with possibilities waiting to be explored. This was their shared moment, the dawning of a new legacy woven together with the threads of their stories. Join Claire on her incredible journey as she embraces vulnerability, redefining leadership into something powerful. Every narrative we create matters. Grab hold of your own story and share it, because true transformation starts here. Now's the time to take action. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you to confront your own narrative. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and embark on their own stories of growth. Don't wait even one more second to join us in this incredible community of personal growth, connection, and authentic leadership.